Now, we are in James chapter 5, verse 13. Reading from the King James Bible, quote, "Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms," unquote. Now, let's compare this to other versions of the Bible that are worth studying. We'll start out with the ESV, quote, "Is any one among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing praise," unquote. And let's look at the Young's Literal Translation. Quote, "Does anyone suffer evil among you? Let him pray. Is any of good cheer? Let him sing psalms." Now let's go ahead and parse this verse out into the Greek. Is any among you afflicted? Now let's look at the Greek word for afflicted and see how it's used. It's used in the present tense, so now, active voice, so they're talking about you, and indicative mood, so it's the stating of fact. Any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Now let's look at that phrase, let him pray. Does James use it anywhere else, or anybody use that particular Greek word in the New Testament? And we see that this is the only place that this phrase, this Greek word, is used. So let's parse it out now. In the entire Greek New Testament, that is. It's done in the present tense, so now, middle or passive deponent, which is almost always being translated as an active, and an imperative mood, so it corresponds to the English, which expresses a command to the hearer to perform a certain action by the order and authority of the one who's commanding it. So, if you're afflicted, you are commanded by Jesus to pray. Is any merry? So let's look at the Greek word for merry. It's done in the present, active, indicative. Now, talking about you and stating in fact. Any merry. So let's continue. Let him sing psalms. Now let's take a look and see if this Greek word is used anywhere else in the New Testament by this writer or anyone, and it is not. It's only used this one time, and it's here in James 5. So let's parse out the Greek word. It's written in the present active imperative. So now, it's talking about you, and it's talking about following the command by the one who has the authority to command. So, here we have two commands. If you're afflicted, let him pray. If you're merry, let him sing psalms. So this parses out the Greek New Testament for this verse. Now let's look at John Gill's commentary on the Bible. Quote, "Is any among you afflicted?" Unquote. As the people of God generally are, they are commonly a poor and an afflicted people. At least there are many among them that are so, and many are their afflictions. Those whom Christ loves, as he did Lazarus, are not free from sicknesses and diseases. And these are rather signs of love than arguments against it. And when this is the case of any of the saints, what is to be done? Quote, "Let him pray," unquote, to God that can save him in the name of Christ under the influence of the Spirit, believing in the word of promise. Times of afflictions are proper times for prayer. There is then more especially need of it, and God sometimes lays his afflicting hand upon his people when they have been negligent in their duty, and he has not heard of them for some time, in order to bring them near to him, to seek his face, pay him a visit, and pour out a prayer before him. See Psalms chapter 50, verse 15. Quote, "And call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver thee, and thou shalt glorify me." Unquote. Is any merry? In good heart and spirit, in a good frame of mind, as well as in prosperous circumstances, in soul, body, and estate? Quote, "Let him sing psalms." Unquote. Let him not only be inwardly joyful, as he should be in prosperity, and be thankful to God for his many mercies, temporal and spiritual, he enjoys, but let him express it vocally and sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. Not that these are the only persons that are to sing psalms, or this the only time, any more than that afflicted persons are the only ones that are to pray, or the time of the affliction the only time of prayer. But as affliction more especially calls for prayer, so spiritual joy and rejoicing in prosperous seasons for singing of psalms, weeping, and singing of psalms are thought by the Jews inconsistent. Kimchi, on the title of the third psalm, observes that rabbins say that when David went up into the ascent of Mount Olives, he wept. And if he wept, why is this called a psalm? And is it a psalm, why did he weep? This ends John Gill's commentary on James chapter 5, verse 13. Now, let's look at Matthew Henry's commentary on the Bible on this verse. As Christians, we are taught to suit ourselves to the dispensations of providence. Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. Our condition in this world is various, and our wisdom is to be submit to its being so, and to behave as becomes us both prosperity and other afflictions. Sometimes we are in sadness, sometimes in mirth. God has set these one against another with the other that we may the better observe the several duties he enjoys, and the impressions made on our passions and affections may be rendered suitable to our devotions. Passions and affections may be rendered suitable to our devotions. Afflictions should put us upon prayer, and prosperity should make us abound in praise. Not that prayer is to be confined to a time of trouble, nor singing to a time of mirth, but these several duties may be performed with special advantage and to the happiest purposes at such seasons. 1. In a day of affliction, nothing is more seasonable than prayer. The person afflicted must pray himself, as well as engage the prayers of others for him. Times of affliction should be praying times. To this end, God sends afflictions that we may be engaged to seek him early, and that those who at other times have neglected him may be brought to inquire after him. The spirit is then most humble, the heart is broken and tender, and prayer is most acceptable to God when it comes from a contrite, humble spirit. Afflictions naturally draw out complaints, and to whom should we complain but to God in prayer? It is necessary to exercise faith and hope under afflictions, and prayer is the appointed means both for obtaining and increasing these graces in us. Is any afflicted? Let him pray. Number 2. In a day of mirth, the prosperity singing psalms is very proper and seasonable. In the original, it is only said sing. Psalleto is the Greek word. Without the addition of psalms or any other word, and we learn from the writing of several of the first ages of Christianity, those with the letter of Penis, and from some passages in Justin Martyr and Tertullian, that the Christians were accustomed to singing hymns, either taken out of scriptures or more private compositions in their worship of God. Though some have thought that Paul's advising both the Colossians and Ephesians to speak to one another in psalms and hymns, in spiritual songs, refer only to the composition of scriptures, the Psalms of David being distinguished in Hebrew, words that exactly answer these the apostles. Let these be as it will. This, however, we are sure of, that the singing of psalms is a gospel ordinance, and that our joy should be holy joy, consecrated to God. Singing is so directed to hear as to show that in any be in this circumstances of mirth or prosperity, he should turn to his mirth, though alone, and by himself, in this channel. Holy mirth becomes families and retirements as well as public assemblies. Let our singing be such as to make melody within our heart unto the Lord, and God will assuredly be well pleased with this kind of devotion. Now let's end Matthew Henry's commentary on this passage of Matthew 5:13. I'm going to add into this that we are approaching talking about prayer and healing and faith. So let's take a look at this verse and make sure that we're getting ready for what's coming next. We are told that if you're afflicted, let him pray. If you're merry, let him sing psalms. So we're going to go into the next verse next about healing, prayer, faith, sickness, all that. So right now I want you to pay particular attention about the beginning path here. If you are afflicted, let him pray. So if you've got afflictions, sickness, whatever, you are required to pray. If you can pray, you're required to pray. So this begins the rest of this chapter here about healing. So begin by praying first. Now this is discovering the scriptures. May God richly bless you as you go about your ways learning the word.